Now we will discuss the construction of three-phase induction motor. See, as we discussed earlier that the induction motor can be a single phase induction motor or can be a polyphase induction motor depending upon the nature of supply, that is the nature of input power. Since the single phase induction motor are favored for domestic application, whereas the polyphase induction motor usually used in industrial application, and they have a range of rating that cover a entire spectrum of horsepower ratings. And usually polyphase induction motor are installed at a location where a polyphase power supply is easily accessible. Since due to a widespread generation and transmission of a three-phase power, most polyphase induction motors are of three-phase type. So in your course also we have to discuss a three-phase induction motor. Okay. So before going into the detail of construction of three-phase induction motor, first it's important to understand the fundamental principle of operation of induction motor, because from that principle of operation, that is the operating principle of induction motor, you can easily develop how the construction of induction motor evolved. Now, since the operation of a three-phase induction motor is based upon the application of Faraday's law and Lorentz force on a conductor. Faraday's law you already know. Lorentz force, that is, if we have a current carrying conductor placed in a magnetic field, a force is exerted on that conductor. We already know that. That force is basically due to the Lorentz force law that act on that conductor. Now consider, in order to understand the principle of operation, that is the fundamental principle behind the operation of induction motor, consider a series of conductors whose extremities are shorted by a bar A and bar B. For example, we have many number of conductors. One conductor, two conductor, 3, 4, and so on. Okay. Now the end point of each conductor is shorted by a bar type of structure. For example, like this. Similarly, here also we use another bar in order to short these conductors. Okay. Now a permanent magnet moves at a speed v, so we use a permanent magnet. For example, we have a permanent magnet like this in order to establish a magnetic field. If this is the north pole of the magnet, and this magnet is basically moving in this direction. Okay. Yes. Okay, let me complete the diagram like this. Okay. Now this magnet is basically moving in this direction with the velocity v. Okay. So that its magnetic field sweep across the conductors. Its magnetic, since this is a north pole, magnetic field will be like this. This magnetic field basically swept through the conductor. Okay. Now the direction of magnetic field in this case is this, and the direction of velocity is this. So an EMF is induced in that conductor. Since the conductors are short circuited at both the ends, therefore current start flowing in this conductor like this and like this. If this is I current is established here, then since all the conductors are made up of same material, the resistance in the loop is same, therefore current is divided in two part. I2 will move like this, I2. Now in this case what will happen? The force start exerting on the conductor, okay, and the direction of force will be in the direction of the moving velocity, that is the direction of magnetic field, that is the direction of force will be like this. This force will act on this conductor. Now what will happen if you see the sequence of events take place? A voltage of value E is equals to BLV, that is L is the length of the conductor and B is the magnetic field and V is the velocity of the moving magnet. So the voltage of magnitude BLV will get induced in the conductor, okay, and this voltage is induced in each conductor while it is being cut by the flux. This is due to the Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction. Now the induced voltage produce current which circulate in the loop around the conductor through bars like this. Since the current carrying conductor is placed in the magnetic field, now the condition arises that a current carrying conductor is now placed in a magnetic field. Therefore these conductors experience a mechanical force which is governed by Lorentz force law. The force always acts in the direction to drag the conductor along the magnetic field. So the direction of the force will be like this, okay. Now all these sequence of events are highlighted over here. EMF is induced in the conductor due to the presence of magnetic field and the velocity of that magnetic field. The induced EMF causes current to circulate in the bar because the end points of the bars are short circuited. And due to the condition that now a current carrying conductor is placed in a magnetic field, force start experienced by these conductors, and the direction of force act in the direction to drag the conductor along with the magnetic field. Now if we close the ladder, that is the ladder type of structure, upon itself to form a squirrel cage and place it in a magnetic field that is rotating in nature, it means a magnetic field which have certain velocity, and you can get a structure of a induction motor. So we have a ladder type of structure right now. If we close this structure, what we have is we have this bar, then we have ladders bar, then we have this bar over here, and this structure is basically a cage type of structure. Now the same ladder is, now if we place this ladder in a magnetic field that is rotating in nature, means there is a velocity of that magnetic field. If we have a magnetic field produced by the stator windings, and we place this ladder type of structure, again the force will exert on the conductors. The direction of the force will be as per the direction of magnetic field and current flowing in the conductor. Because of this force, this rotor starts its rotation, and in this way induction motor will work. Okay, so from this discussion you have a clear idea that what we require is, we require a rotor type of structure and a stator to produce revolving or rotating magnetic field, and we have to place that rotor in that field in order to get a structure of induction motor. So this is the broad constructional detail of induction motor. Now step by step we will discuss the construction. Okay, so the essential component from this discussion, you can say that the essential component of an induction motor are a stator and rotor. Okay, and now what is an stator? Stator is basically the outer member of an induction motor and is formed by stacking thin slotted highly permeable material that is laminated inside a steel or cast iron frame. So basically we have a stator like this, we have a frame type of structure, you can say that a stator is somewhat like we have a frame over here. ठीक है, inside this frame what we have is, we have a core of the rotor, so we have frame, we have core. Core is made up of highly permeable steel laminated sheets. This frame is basically provides mechanical support to the motor. Frame is for mechanical support basically. Support to the motor. Although the frame is also made up of magnetic material, but it is not designed to carry the magnetic flux. That is the flux which is required to induce the EMF in the armature. So this frame is not basically designed to carry that magnetic flux. That magnetic flux is carried by the core, not by the frame. Okay, sorry. See, the frame is not designed to carry the magnetic flux. Core will carry the magnetic flux. Okay. Now the identical coils are placed into the slots, that is these slots, and then connected to form a complete winding, and then the output of these windings are taken out and then connected to the supply to form a complete winding. Now if you look at the structure of the rotor is also composed of thin slotted highly permeable steel lamination that are pressed together to form a cylindrical type of structure, and that cylindrical structure is basically put it on the shaft which is free to rotate. So if you see the structure of rotor can be of two type. It can be a squirrel cage type, that is the structure we had discussed in the principle of operation. Like this, we have bars short circuited at the end. The short circuiting is done in order to establish the circulating current, so that force start exerting on these conductors. We have another type of structure, that is wound rotor type structure. In this type of structure, what we have is, again we have a cylindrical type of structure, but in this structure we have slotted sheets that are stacked together to form a complete core of the rotor. This whole structure is basically mounted on the shaft like this, and the armature windings are placed in these slots. Let me select another color for it, black. We have armature winding in these slots, and they are short circuited either using a slip ring arrangement or one winding, another winding. They all are then short circuited, maybe through a resistance like this. You will see. So the rotor is made up of this type of arrangement. Again, what we have to do is, we have to first form the from, for example, we have a sheet like this. What we will do is, we will cut a structure like this from that sheet, and we have a structure like this for our core of the armature. If we take out this slotted sheet, what we have is, we have a structure like this. Now if we put another sheet adjacent to it, it will be like this. If we put more and more sheet adjacent to it, it will form a this type of arrangement. That is the core of the rotor. Okay. It is important to note that in order to stack, that is, in order to press together these slotted sheets so that we can have a cylindrical structure, what we will do is, we will use either bolts, put a nut and bolt structure inside it, similarly, and do it, tight it with nut over here, so that we have a cylindrical structure. One important thing I would like to highlight over here is that depending upon the rating of the machine, if the rating of a machine is high, what does it means? It means a high current will flow in the windings. If high current will flow in the windings, what does it means? It means I square R losses will be more. If I square R losses increases, it means heat dissipation increases. This heat dissipation is basically absorbed by the core, and core will get heated, so the efficiency of the motor will reduce. In order to do a proper ventilation of it, what we have to do is we have to provide holes in the core. That hole go through the whole cylindrical shape structure, so that if we have a air ventilation, air will enter over here and pass over here to make it cool down. Okay. We can also use forced airflow by using fan. If we attach a fan over here, this fan will rotate and the forced air will flow. If the machine is of very high rating, sometime we need to use liquid fluid to flow through the holes, so that the temperature will get reduced easily. So in this way the structure of stator and rotor evolves. As per the requirement, we have to go like this. Now let us have a look of the picture. See, this is basically the structure of stator that we have discussed in detail. What we have is, we have laminated sheets like this, laminated sheets. We have slots over here. See, we have one sheet, two sheet, and we put it together, all these sheet, we will get the structure like this. Now what we have to do is, since the core is also made up of conducting material and windings are also conducting, so if we directly place the winding, what will happen? The chances of short circuit or breakdown is more. So what we will do is, we will do a first proper insulation of it. We will put it in insulation. That insulation can be of mica or some mica sheet or some paper insulating material. We put it insulating material over here, then we will do the windings in the core. Okay, so this winding will be like this. Maybe the wire will go like this and will come out from this. It is, we usually draw like this, but this wire is basically, we put it over here and it will just adjust like this, so that there is no hindrance in this region, because we have to place the rotor in this region. Similarly, the next winding will start from here and we put it over here and it will go like this. Okay, so in this way you can see that the assembly of a stator is like this. Now if we look at the rotor structure, just have a look on rotor structure. We have a rotor structure like this. See, this is the core of the rotor. Core of the rotor, we have laminated sheets. We have slots. Slots cutted on laminated sheet. This sheet is basically like this. We have slots over here. We have a hole in this over here in order to mount it on the shaft. And see, here we have another passage to provide air flow or some fluid flow in order to maintain the temperature of the core. Now, large number of sheets are stacked together. We place large number of sheets together. We place large number of sheets together, and we will have a structure of the core. In this way you can have a structure of the core. Now see, this is the structure of the core. Now what we have to do is we have to put it the bar over here, then we will make it short circuit through the ring. That bar type of structure is basically over here. We have copper bars. These bars will carry armature current, and at the ends of these bars are short circuited by conducting ring or conducting rings. So this is a cage type of structure of the rotor. This structure is mounted on the core, and we will get this structure, final structure of squirrel cage induction motor. So if you look at the different properties of a squirrel cage induction motor in detail and the construction, we can see over here. Squirrel, first thing is that how we are going to decide where we use a squirrel cage type of rotor or wound type of rotor. So usually squirrel cage type of rotor is commonly used when the load requirement is little. That is, the load require a little starting torque, means low starting torque. For example, a small motor, winding is molded by forcing a molten conducting material into a slots in the die casting procedures. So this is also one way of doing the winding of the squirrel cage rotor. That windings are basically, instead of welding like this, we will just make a mold and put it a material in that, and the whole molding process will provide you a structure like this. Now for a large motor, the squirrel cage winding is found by inserting heavy conductors, that is shown. And it is common practice to skew the rotor laminations in order to reduce the cogging and electrical noise in the motor. What is this skewing process? It is basically twisting of the conductors. That is, the conductors are not exactly parallel, but they are little bit twisted. Like this. Why it is so? Because see, the rotor will rotate in a particular direction, maybe for example this direction or this direction. So if it rotates in this direction, due to its momentum, there is a twisting between the one end and the other end. This twisting will result in twisting of the conductors. So we usually provide that type of arrangement so that more screwing will not take place, clogging and electrical noises will get reduced. Now let us have a look on the photograph of a squirrel cage rotor type motor. So this is the real picture of a squirrel cage motor. We have a cutted section of it. This is the rotor we have. This part is the stator we have. These are the stator windings. See, and this is a squirrel cage motor. Core and bars are pegged. You will not see any winding over here. The whole rotor is mounted on the shaft, and bearing is attached with it so that it is free to rotate. Now if we give a 3-phase supply to it in the stator, what will happen? A rotating magnetic field is developed. That rotating magnetic field, as you already studied, that for developing a rotating magnetic field, what you require is balanced 3-phase supply, and winding should be placed 120 degree apart. So by supplying such type of supply to the stator, we have a rotating magnetic field. The rotating magnetic field linked with the rotor conductors, and rotor conductors will experience a force, and since it is free to rotate, rotation will starts. Now if we mount some load over here, just like pulley type of arrangement or any belt type of arrangement, you can have a mechanical output from an electrical input. Okay, now just have a look on wound type rotor. Wound type rotors are basically used where the load require a high starting torque. Means if we require a high starting torque, just like in a case of elevators, starting torque is high because it has to move from the standing position suddenly. Okay, so usually we use wound type of rotor over there. Okay, a structure of wound type of rotor will be like this. See, what we have over here is we have laminated core made up of laminated sheet, all laminated sheets are stacked together. As we discussed earlier, we have core made of laminated sheet, or laminated sheet are stacked together. Okay, and we will place, instead of placing a bar and short circuited from the end, we will place windings in the slot of the core like this. These are the windings. The output of the windings are connected to the slip ring type of arrangement, because what we require is if we didn't connect it to the slip ring, then the windings, that is we have 3-phase winding on the rotor also, and the one end of the winding is here, other end of the winding is here, and other end of the winding is also here. If the winding terminals are open circuited, then what will happen? No current will flow, although the voltage will induce. If we put this arrangement inside a stator, that arrangement will be in the rotating magnetic field, and because of that rotating magnetic field, voltage will induce in the conductors, that is in the coil turns, but current will not flow because the terminals are open circuited. So in order to make current flow through the windings, what we have to do is we have to somehow short circuit the terminals. And so how we will short circuit it? We will use slip ring type of arrangement, that is we will place a slip rings on the shaft and connect each winding to different ring arrangement like this. Now all the whole arrangement is mounted on the single shaft, so that the ring will also rotate when the windings rotate. This will avoid the squeaking, this will avoid the breaking of the terminals. Okay, now what we will do, if now we have to short circuit the output terminals. So in order to short circuit the output terminals, what we will do is we will connect the slip rings through a brush arrangement to an external circuit. We will connect the slip rings through a brush arrangement to an external circuit. That external circuit may consist of variable resistance, so that we can vary the resistance, and then we will short circuit it. Okay, so if you closely look at the brushes arrangement, the brushes arrangement will be like this. We have slip ring type of arrangement, 1 slip ring, 2 slip ring, 3 slip ring. Brushes are placed over here. These brushes are basically inside a metallic cap. This is carbon brush, and a spring is attached with this brush, so that as due to the friction, the length of the brush is reduced. This spring will further pushes the carbon brush, and the contact between the slip ring surface and brush is still maintained. So if you closely look at the brush arrangement, the brush arrangement will be like this. Its lower surface will be like this, because it is placed on a slip ring type of arrangement, and we have a contact terminal. Inside it we have a carbon material brush. Here we have a metallic capping of it. That terminal is attached with that metallic capping and external circuit, and in between them we have a spring that pushes the brushes continuously on the surface of the slip ring. Now let us have a look of wound type rotor. That is the practical wound type rotor. See, what we have is, we have the rotor arrangement over here. We have stator windings as in case of cage type rotor. We have slip ring type of arrangement over here, and these are the brushes that is attached to the slip ring, so that they will provide terminal in order to connect the external resistance. This is the stator coil input supply terminal. Here we connect it to the main supply, and we will give a 3-phase balance supply to the stator. Here we have windings. See, here we have winding wires because it is a wound type of rotor. Here we have a core of it. In between each core we have slots. Windings are placed inside the slots, and the output terminals. See, output terminals are connected with the slip ring. In that slip ring, the whole arrangement is mounted on a same shaft. That is the rotor, The slip ring arrangement, all are mounted on the same shaft. Brushes are attached with the body. See, brushes are attached with the body, that is they are stationary, and the output terminal of the brushes are basically taken out and connected to the load resistance or load resistance or variable resistance, and joined together to provide a closed loop path so that the current in the winding, that is the rotor winding, will starts flowing. Okay, once the current starts flowing, the motor starts its rotation. Now one thing important that I want to know from your side is, what do you understand by armature winding and rotor winding? So this you have to answer in the comment section. You can I will post this lecture on Google Classroom, and you just have to comment your answer below that. Okay, now this is all about the construction of an induction motor. Construction we have seen is basically we have a stator, we have rotor. Just to summarize the construction, we have a stator, we have rotor. Rotor can be cage type or wound type. Okay, if the rotor is wound type, then we have slip rings also. Okay, if the rotor is cage type, then end are shorted by bars. See, in this way you will find that how the construction of the induction motor evolves. Okay, so from the basic principle of operation, that is Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction and Lorentz force law, you have an idea that we require a magnetic field, and then we need to establish a condition of a current carrying conductor placed in a magnetic field. So if both the condition established, our rotor starts its rotation and induction motor works. Okay, now in order to establish the magnetic field, what we require is a stator. That stator will provide the field that is the magnetic field required, that is the rotating magnetic field. And in order to establish the condition of a current carrying conductor placed in a magnetic field, we require this rotor arrangement. This rotor arrangement will provide a condition that a current carrying conductor is now placed in a magnetic field. So the force starts exerting on that conductor, and since the rotor is free to rotate, it will start its rotation. In this way, induction motor starts its operation. Okay, now you will observe that depending upon the supply induction, we can classify induction motor as single phase and polyphase, and depending upon the rotor construction, we can classify induction motor as cage type, wound type. So in this way we have different types of classification of induction motor. So in the next slide we will see the classification of induction motor. See, based on the nature of supply, induction motor can be classified as single phase induction motor and polyphase induction motor. Polyphase means can have two phase, three phase or more phases. I am writing phase by 5, you can write it completely PHA. Okay, now based on the construction, that is construction of the rotor, we have a wound type rotor and we have cage type rotor. Wound type rotors are used where we require a high initial torque, that is starting torque requirement is high. In case of cage type rotor, where low starting torque required. So in this way we can decide where we have to use a cage type rotor or where we have to use wound type rotor. Why starting torque is high in case of wound type rotor, that we will discuss later on. Now most of, as we know that most of the polyphase induction motor are three phase type, that we just discussed the construction of three phase induction motor. Now we will discuss the principle of operation of a three phase induction motor. See, the principle of operation is like this. When a starter winding of a three phase induction motor is connected to a three phase power source, it produces a magnetic field whose magnitude is constant and it revolves around the periphery of the rotor at synchronous speed. So what we are doing is basically we will give a three phase supply to the stator, that is a balanced three phase supply. So what balanced three phase supply will do, it will establish a revolving magnetic field or rotating magnetic field inside the stator. Okay, the rotating magnetic field rotates at synchronous speed, that is and H is equals to 120 F by P. From where you get this expression, that you have to go back in the first year course of EEA 1110. In that course we explained in detail how rotating magnetic field is developed and how this expression is obtained. You can visit over there and you can access the content and you can see how this expression is obtained. Now see, if the frequency, this is the expression that we obtained, where P is the number of poles. This revolving field induces an electromotive force in the rotor winding, since the rotor windings form a closed loop, as we have seen in the construction. The induced EMF in each coil give rise to an induced current in that coil. So what will happen? The induced EMF results in the current flowing in the coil. When the current carrying, now the condition is established, when a current carrying coil is immersed in a magnetic field, it experiences a force that turns to rotate it. The torque thus developed is called the starting torque. It's important to note that we just give a supply to the stator, and right now the rotor is stationary. As current starts flowing through the rotor conductors, what will happen? Force start exerting on the conductor bar, and what will happen? mm, torque, and the torque uh, thus developed, and this torque is basically a starting torque. Now see, if there is a load attached with the rotor, for example we attach certain load, pulley load or any type of load, or any big wheel is attached with this rotor. Okay, then if this starting torque is less than the load torque, then the rotor will not rotate. And if as soon as this starting torque is equals to the load torque, still rotor will not rotate. When rotor will rotate, the rotor will only rotate when the starting torque is greater than the load torque, so that it will overcome the load. Only then the rotor will rotate. See, if the load torque is less than the starting torque, load torque is less than the starting torque, or we can say starting torque is more than the load torque, the rotor starts its rotation. Okay, now the force developed and thereby the rotation of the rotor are in the same direction as the revolving field. This is in accordance with Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction. So this is all about the working principle of induction motor. Now if we have another condition, for example like there is no load attached to the rotor, then what will happen? For example, right now the rotor is unloaded, there is no load over here, as soon as we give a three-phase supply to the stator, rotating magnetic field developed. This magnetic field results in induced EMF on the rotor conductors. This induced EMF give rise to the current, and due to that current flowing in the rotor conductors, forces start exerting on these conductors. Now there is no load attached to the rotor. At this condition, the rotor achieves speed nearly equals to the synchronous speed. That is, since the rotor rotates in the direction along with the direction of rotating magnetic field, now the rotating magnetic field speed is ns, and it tries to drag the rotor also in its direction, and since there is no load attached to it, the rotor from 0, it will soon reach the speed nearly equal to the synchronous speed. Okay. Now however, the rotor can never rotate at a synchronous speed. Why it is so? This is the reason over here. See, what we have seen is that the voltage is induced because there is a relative motion between the rotating field and rotor conductor. See, rotor conductor are stationary and field is rotating, so there is a relative motion between them. Due to that relative motion, voltage is induced in the conductor. Now if the speed of the rotor is nearly equal to the synchronous speed, then what will happen? The rotor coil would appear stationary with respect to the revolving field. Because of this, what will happen? There would be no induced EMF in the coil. Now if there is no induced EMF, then what will happen? In the absence of induced EMF, there would be no current in the rotor conductor, and this will result in no force would be experienced by the rotor conductors. And since in the absence of force, the rotor tends to slow down. As soon as rotor slow down, the induction process takes over again. What will happen? The rotor nearly reached to the synchronous speed, but as soon as rotor speed is equals to synchronous speed, what will happen? No EMF induced. No EMF induced results in no current. No current. No current results in no force. No force. As soon as no force act on the rotor, rotor speed start decreasing. NR start decreasing. As soon as NR decreases, now this will result in relative motion between NS, relative speed between NS and NR. As soon as this relative speed appear between NS and NR, again EMF is start inducing, and the whole process will take over again. So from this we observe that induction motor cannot run at synchronous speed, because in an induction motor the force exerted on the rotor conductor is due to the process of electromagnetic induction, and if the rotor rotates at synchronous speed, there will be no relative motion between the rotating magnetic field and rotor conductor, and hence no force will exert on the conductor. So the rotor gets slow down, and it will its speed get reduces. Now look at a summary of this principle of operation. What we get from this discussion is the rotor receives its power by induction only when there is a relative motion between the speed and the revolving field. Since the rotor is rotate at a speed lower than the synchronous speed of the revolving field, and induction motor is also called as a synchronous motor that we specify in earlier in this lecture. Okay. That's why we sometimes call it as a synchronous motor also. Now let us have a look on rotor speed and slip. Let us assume that Nm be the rotor speed. Let us assume that Nm be the rotor speed at certain load. If there is a load over attached to the shaft of the rotor, load any belt or anything, at this condition, let us suppose that Nm is the rotor speed with respect to motor. The revolving field is moving ahead at a relative speed of revolving field, that is synchronous speed minus rotor speed. Relative speed will be, this is a revolving magnetic field speed. The relative speed will be Nr, and which is given by Ns minus Nr. This speed is basically called as slip speed. That is, the rotor is slipping behind the revolving magnetic field by this amount, that is Ns minus Nr. This is the speed with which motor is slipping behind. However, in common practice, we usually use slip instead of using slip speed, and the slip is basically defined as the ratio of slip speed and synchronous speed. That is, slip is basically defined as ratio of slip speed and synchronous speed. Slip speed is what? Nr, this is speed, upon Ns, synchronous speed. From the above expression, that is this expression, what we have a Nr is nothing but Ns minus Nm, that is motor speed. It is equals to Ns minus Nm upon Nr, or we can say that in terms of angular speed, you can say that omega s minus omega m upon omega s. This is nothing but slip. Okay. Now if we want to express the motor speed in terms of slip, we can express like this. Motor speed is nothing but 1 minus ns upon nr. This expression is obtained by the expression that is ns minus nm upon ns. Okay. Now when the rotor is, from the above expression we have different, we can establish different conclusions. For example, let us suppose that when the rotor is stationary, what does it means? It means that nm is equals to 0, that is the rotor is not rotating. If we put 0 in this expression, what will happen, or in this expression what will happen? It implies that when the rotor is standstill, slip is equals to, this is 0 ns upon ns, it is equals to 1. So in this condition the rotor appear exactly like a short circuit. We will see that how we are establishing that fact. Now if for example suppose that if the rotor is rotating at synchronous speed, if the rotor is rotating at synchronous speed means ns nm is equals to ns, it implies that slip will be equals to 0, and this is true. If the rotor rotates at synchronous speed, then there is no slipping between the rotor and the revolving field, therefore s will be equals to 0. See, the frequency of the induced EMF in the rotor winding is same as that of the revolving field in case of transformer, or in case when the rotor is stationary. This is when rotor is stationary. Okay, so when the rotor is stationary, it start behaving like a transformer. See, in case of transformer we know that the primary winding frequency is same as that of secondary winding. So in case of induction motor also, if the rotor is stationary, that is the block rotor condition, the frequency of the induced EMF is same as that of the revolving field. However, when the rotor rotates, it is the relative speed of the rotor that is responsible for the induced EMF in its winding. So in this case, the frequency of the induced EMF in a rotor will be defined as, if Fr is the frequency, and it is defined as Np upon 120 and P into Nr, P number of pole into Nr. From where this we get this formula? We know that N is equals to 120 F by P. So Ns is equals to 120 Fs by P. So Fr is P Nr upon 120, and this is nothing but P into Ns minus Nm upon 120. From where we get this? We know that in the previous slide we know that Nr is this. Now this is nothing but, this is equals to P into Ns upon 120 Ns minus Nm upon Ns. And if you carefully look at it, at this expression, this is nothing but slip S, and this is nothing but F, that is supply frequency. So this expression is equals to S into F. So what we get is, we get the expression of rotor frequency like this. Rotor frequency is nothing but Fr is equals to S into F. The above expression, you can observe that highlight the fact that rotor frequency depends upon the slip of the motor. At standstill position, slip is 1, that is this is 1. It means at standstill position Rf is equals to F, since S is equals to 1. The rotor frequency decreases with the decrease in slip. If the slip decreases, F decreases. As the slip reaches 0, frequency also reaches 0. An induction motor usually operate at low slip. Its slip is usually 2% to 6%. That is, the lagging of the rotor speed is not much. Hence the frequency of the induced EMF of the rotor is low. For this reason, the core losses in the rotor magnetic circuit is almost ignored or near to 0. Why? Because core losses depends on the frequency. If the slip is low, frequency is low. Core losses. So this is all about introduction of induction motor and basic fundamental working principle of induction motor and construction of induction motor. Okay, now next we have we are going to solve an example over here. See, here we have a problem. The problem says that a 280 volt 60 hertz 4 pole 3 phase induction motor has a full load speed of this much. That is, full load speed is this much, speed of the rotor when it is fully loaded. Now what we have to do is, we have to calculate synchronous speed, slip of the motor and rotor frequency. Okay, the solution will be like this. You are asked to calculate synchronous speed. Synchronous speed is nothing but speed of the revolving magnetic field, and it is given by 120 into supply frequency into upon number of poles. Here number of pole is 4. Supply frequency which is equals to 60 hertz. So what we have is 120 into 60 upon 4. It is nothing but RPM. Okay, very simple. Now the second thing you have to calculate is slip at full load. So as we know that slip is defined as synchronous speed minus speed of the rotor at full load upon synchronous speed again, and it is nothing but 800 minus 1755, that is NR upon 1800, which is equals to 0.025, or you can say that 2.5%. So in percentage usually we calculate, we represent slip like this much percentage. What we have to do is multiply by 100 and you can get a percentage of it. Now third part is what you have to calculate the frequency of the rotor frequency, that is Fr at full load. So see, you know that Fr is nothing but slip of the rotor and frequency of the supply. Slip at full load. Slip of the rotor is, we already calculated it, 0.025 into 60, it is equals to 1.5 hertz. See how low is the frequency of the rotor. The losses are, core losses are almost 0. Now these are the reference books that you can see, Nagaraj Kothari and Chapman. In Chapman you can see. Now what I told you to answer in the comment section is that assignment problem post in comment section. What is the difference between armature winding and rotor winding? And what do you understand by field winding and stator winding? Very simple question. This is all about lecture 1. Thank you so much.